All right. Welcome, Excellencies, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning from Indonesia and to other colleagues and participants from different time zones. My name is Juan from Energy Modeling and Policy Planning, ASEAN Center for Energy, and I will be the master of ceremony for today's event. On behalf of ACE, I would like to thank all of the Excellencies and participants for taking your time to participate to our report launching webinar titled Measures and Investment for Clean Energy and Power Sector Resilience in ASEAN. The ASEAN Center for Energy, through the support of Energy Foundation China, has conducted a study to provide potential policy recommendations on measures and investment for clean energy and power sector resilience in ASEAN. The study aims to assess the short-term measures and mobilizing long-term investments in clean energy and power sector resilience in ASEAN to reinforce ASEAN energy security. The main objective of the webinar are one, to provide policy recommendation for AMS to enhance the capability to attract clean investment for energy infrastructure by presenting the implication of the report findings. Second is to share insights on the integrated approach to green fiscal consolidation towards green transition in Southeast Asia countries. Before we begin the opening remarks, I would like to remind you to use the Q&A features to ask questions during the webinar. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will start our, we will start our very first session of today's event by the welcoming remarks delivered by Ms. Han Wei, Director of Projects, President, Office Energy Foundation China. Ms. Han, the floor is now yours.
Thank you. Distinguished Dr. Noki Aya Uttama, ladies and gentlemen, dear other participants, good afternoon. I'm Han Wei from Energy Foundation China, and I work as a project director at the President Office of Energy Foundation China. So I'm very delighted today to join this report launching event. As a moderator just introduced, EFC and ACE are co-hosting this report launching event, measures and investment for clean energy and power sector resilience in ASEAN countries. So it is my great pleasure to have this opportunity to open this event on behalf of Energy Foundation China today. So begin with this, please allow me to briefly introduce Energy Foundation China first, and what we have been working in terms of driving the climate ambition by supporting the sustainable energy development. Briefly, Energy Foundation China is an INGO that has been working in China since 1999. We're dedicated to China's sustainable energy development. So overall, we support the policy development, policy research and development, and the standard development and implementation, as well as capacity building and international collaboration across many sectors and the fields. For example, power industry, transportation. We also work on low carbon cities, environmental management, as well as the low carbon economic growth and the strategic communication. So that's all the fields we are working within in China, and also beyond China. We also support the international collaboration by promoting the sustainable energy development globally. So back to this meeting, Energy Foundation China, for the past year, we support ACE, the ASEAN Center for Energy, to carry out this research on investments and measures for clean energy and power sector resilience in ASEAN countries. So through the accessing short-term measures and mobilizing long-term investments in clean energy and power sector resilience in ASEAN countries. So the project aims to provide the policy recommendations on improving and enabling conditions for infrastructure investment, and also explore more beneficial cooperation opportunities with international stakeholders. So that's why we have today's launching event about the key findings through this joint research project. We hope this project could contribute to improve the capacity and investment conditions of ASEAN countries, and laying a foundation for enhanced future collaboration between China and ASEAN countries to boost energy transition and achieve sustainable energy development. So we all see that in the past, South Asia has developed rapidly over the past 2 decades, and the region is a major engine of global economic growth. So its total population is more than 675 million, and about 8.5% of the world's population. So this drives the energy demand significantly increased in the past decades. So we did say the energy demand in Southeast Asia has increased on average by around 3% a year, according to IEA's analysis and estimation. We also say this trend will continue to increase by 2030. So the 3/4 of this increase in energy demand to 2030 is made by fossil fuel, according to the analysis, which lead to a near 35% increase in CO2 emissions. So we do say a big potential for emission reduction and energy transition in this region. Meanwhile, we say the governments across Southeast Asia have set up long-term plans for more secure and sustainable future. So I think so far we got numbers, 6 Southeast Asian countries have already announced net zero emissions and carbon neutrality targets. So how to realize and implement and finally to achieve these targets, that's very critical for next steps. So sustainable finance is a key to funding these long-term targets for the next few decades. Growth will be provided through investment, in which an infrastructure is a more important component. So it's important to ensure that all these infrastructure investments should be put on the track of green growth. So we, as Energy Foundation China, need to work with the local partners in ASEAN countries to support the energy transition and bridging the collaboration between China and the ASEAN countries. So we do look forward to further discussing with you, all of you, how China can contribute better to Southeast Asia countries' low carbon infrastructure development through better policy mechanism, technology innovation, investment and trade, all these topics, including like the energy access, SDG 7 roadmap, renewable development, grid connection and development, as well as like the electrification in building and transportation sector. So we also look forward to deepening the work through continuous collaboration on enhancing ASEAN energy transition together with ACE as well as other partners. So hopefully today we'll have further and fruitful discussion with all of you. And we also hope this discussion can bring more benefits and opportunities to investment in energy transition development in ASEAN countries. So that's just very brief about my opening. I do look forward to your discussion, and we also can deepen our understanding of ASEAN countries' needs and do try to find more opportunities and needs to further working together and collaborate in the future. So I will stop here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Han, for your inspiring speech. Now, please welcome Dr. Nuki Agiotama, Executive Director, ASEAN Center for Energy. Unfortunately, Dr. Nuki has a sudden urgent appointment. He said he's deeply apologized and has prepared this recording.
Good afternoon, Ms. Han Wei, the Directors of Project, President Office, the Energy Foundation China, distinguished speakers, Associate Professors Dr. Hassan Aris, Dr. Nora Yusman Muhammad Yusuf, also Ms. Cecilia Tam, the Senior Investment Analyst from IEA, my colleagues from ACE, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the ASEAN Center for Energy, I am honored to open the launching webinar for the report entitled Measures and Investment for Clean Energy and Power Resilience in ASEAN. I would like to express my appreciation and convey my gratitude to all of the participants and speakers for spending your valuable time participating and sharing perspective and insight with us in this webinar. This event is organized as a joint collaboration between the ASEAN Center for Energy and Energy Foundation China. ACE and EFC have collaborated to strengthen the focus on providing policy recommendation for ASEAN member states to enhance the capability to attract clean investment for energy infrastructure by presenting the implication of the report findings. In 2022, we conducted 2 focus group discussions to gain the required input from the ASEAN member state focal points and related stakeholders regarding the insight and perspective on the study implementation. We have developed several reports for this research, including the strategic report we launched today. Another study deliverable is a capacity building roadmap on energy investment in ASEAN, which is expected to provide insightful guidelines for ASEAN regulators and policymakers to design and make better decisions regarding investment policy to attract funding from energy infrastructure and technologies. Hence, this public webinar is conducted to present the findings and results from the study regarding the integrated approach to green fiscal consolidation towards energy transition in Southeast Asia countries. Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, ASEAN has committed to plenty of low carbon investment, which include maximizing energy access, renewables and power grid enhancement, and electric transportation deployment. However, achieving this target in current condition is not an easy task, which requires new policy outcomes and opportunities which benefit local low-carbon energy infrastructure developments. The energy investment and financing will be key strategies to scale the energy transformation towards a low-carbon future. As reported by the 7th ASEAN Energy Outlook, in the power sector alone, substantial investment as much as $109 billion are required to reach the 35% share of renewable energy in ASEAN installed power capacity by 2025. As targeted in the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation or APAC Phase 2 2021-2025, and also it required $726 billion until 2050. The significant investment needs are driven by the higher implementation cost of cleaner technologies. There is a necessary for ASEAN decision makers to nurture enabling regulatory environments to attract adequate investment in the energy sectors. Therefore, the study on measures and investment for clean energy and power resilience in ASEAN aims to assess the short-term measures and mobilizing longer-term investment in clean energy and power sector resilience in ASEAN to reinforce ASEAN energy security. It is part of the support to implement the annual priority under the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, Phase 2, Program Area Number 6, the Regional Energy Policy Planning, or REPP, Outcome-Based Strategy 5, which is attract investment and financing to accelerate ASEAN energy infrastructure growth. Ladies and gentlemen, today's webinar, we will also learn and hear from the experts on this topic that will enlighten us on how ASEAN countries can assess the measures and investment in clean energy and power sector resilience. We do hope all participants of the webinar can gain more knowledge, ask questions, or share their opinion with our experts. Once again, I would like to thank Energy Foundation China for supporting this study, and also would like to thank to our distinguished speakers and experts for their excellent preparation to share their knowledge. Lastly, I wish you all a fruitful discussion. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
All right. Thank you for your opening, Dr. Nuki. Next, we are going to, before we move to the next session, we will take a moment to conduct a brief polling session. We kindly request your participation in answering these two questions. This will take only a short amount of time, and I will be waiting for the responses for 30 seconds for each questions. Thank you. Please show the question. So the question is, from the following capacity building areas of energy investment and financings, which one do you think is the most important to be enhanced in ASEAN countries? The first option is attracting international investment or fundings. Second option is financing electric vehicle and biofuel deployment. Third one is carbon pricing and trading. And the last one is financing clean cooking. All right, I think we have received several responses. We can now please see the results. All right. 61% answer attracting international investment or fundings. All right, maybe we can further discuss this later on. Please move on to the next question. All right, the second question is, what kind of financial support measure do you think is the most impactful to accelerate investment in clean energy? The first one is feed-in tariff or FIT. Second one is net energy metering. Third one is tax exemption. Last one was international funding. All right, I think we have received several responses. We can now see the results. All right. So I think this one is fairly distributed. Majority is 33% is answering the international fundings. But yeah, aside from that, thank you so much for your active participation. If you want to know further regarding the topic, you can find it out in our report on the next slide. Please move on to the next slide. Yeah, before we move on to the discussion, I would like to share our invitation to access and download the roadmap and report by scanning the QR code provided. So you can access and download both of the documents and see how this will change your previous answers or not. All right, next. Dear all distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite Ms. Rika Safrina to give the introduction of the study, measures and investment for clean energy and power sector resilience in ASEAN, and leads today's discussion. Ms. Rika Safrina is a senior analyst in ASEAN Center for Energy under the Department of Energy Modeling and Policy Planning. She performed research and data analysis related to the energy policy, digitalization, and energy transition in ASEAN. She completed her master's degree in science and technology policy at University of Sussex in the United Kingdom, and her bachelor degree in the informatics engineering from Bandung Institute of Technology, Indonesia. She is involved in several projects, including the ASEAN Energy Outlook, the COVID-19 impact on ASEAN energy sector development, the integration of smart microgrid with variable renewable energy and electric vehicle, ASEAN energy investment, and the ASEAN energy database system. Ms. Rika, the floor is now yours.
All right, thank you very much, Juan. And what an interesting result from the polls where international funding leads both of the question. So good afternoon from Jakarta. My name is Rika Safrina from ACE. As one of the authors of this report, allow me to present to you the introduction and the background of the study. So ASEAN is one of the most dynamic regions in the world, with the regional energy demand is expected to triple that of 2020 levels by 2050. Meeting this demand growth requires power capacity expansion and investment. Based on the power development plan of 10 ASEAN member states, about 60% of the newly installed capacity until 2025 will come from renewables. In addition, in the ATS scenario of the 7 ASEAN Energy Outlook, about 700 gigawatt of power plant capacity is needed to supply the electricity demand in 2050. As you can see in this graph, that was based on the stated national policies of 10 ASEAN member states. On average, RE investment accounts for about 59% in ATS and 77% in APS scenario or regional scenario of the total investment required for the power sector. So this shows a lot of potential in clean energy investment. However, it is found that the current financial source of clean energy investment in ASEAN is dominated primarily by limited public finances. The high risk and low return of investment has made most of capital banks in ASEAN reluctant to finance clean energy investment. The investment in electricity transmission networks should be prioritized due to their multiplier effect and meeting long-term energy security and sustainability in ASEAN. Last but not least, innovations are required to scale up the availability of financial sources, as well as budget allocation and stronger collaboration with the private sector and international donors. As we can see in the results of the polls, international funding is also very important. So with this background, it is deemed necessary to address the importance of attracting energy investments and sustainable financing for ASEAN. It is also important to identify key priority areas in building up regional capabilities on energy investments and financing, and write them in some kind of roadmap. This document is expected to provide insightful guidelines for the ASEAN energy policy makers. As mandated in the APAIC Phase 2, the region should reach 23% RE in TPS and 35% RE installed power capacity by 2025. Under the ASEAN Power Grid Program Area, one action plan is about financial investment in power grid, and under the REPP program areas, there is an action plan to develop a roadmap until 2025 to enhance the capabilities in enabling regulatory environments to attract investments in energy infrastructure and technologies. To develop this roadmap and report, we conducted several focus group discussions and workshops with the key energy stakeholders in ASEAN last October and November. In the last October, we conducted the first FGD, where we invited the ASEAN energy policymakers from the energy ministries, especially. They highlighted several challenges and current situation in their country. For example, in Laos PDR, they highlighted the potential investment in hydropower, as well as electricity market or trading to neighboring countries such as to Thailand or Vietnam. Malaysia has already several energy sector initiatives such as Green Energy Islands. There is also incentive-based regulation framework. Myanmar, almost the same like Lao PDR, they highlighted the importance of interconnectivity and how international support will be critical to boost innovation and the development, especially in the infrastructure. From the Philippines, they already actually have several financing mechanisms in renewable energy, such as Green Energy Auction Program, RE Market Rules, Clean Energy Finance and Investment Mobilization Program, and so on. Meanwhile, in Thailand, they highlighted the 4D1E strategy, which includes decarbonization, digitalization, decentralization, deregulation, and electrification. Other than FGD, we also conducted one-on-one questionnaire with the rest of ASEAN member states who did not join the first FGD. We also conducted the second FGD to invite other stakeholders such as utilities companies and also from researchers or academia and industries as well. And we also conduct literature review and official documents and news. So with those background and methodology, we produce these two documents. The first one is the roadmap on the capacity building to enhance the capacity of ASEAN and energy policymakers on energy investment. And the second one is strategic report on measures and investments for clean energy and power sector resilience in ASEAN. Now I would like to invite the co-authors of this report, who will be presenting or explaining more findings and results from this report. Dr. Nora Yusma Muhammad Yusuf from University Tenaga Nasional or UNITEN. She is currently the director of the Institute of Energy Policy and Research. Dr. Nora has nearly 20 years of experience in teaching, research, and consulting. She is currently serving as a member of Task Force for the Establishment of National Energy Center or NEC at UNITEN in Malaysia, as well as member of the Task Force for the Malaysia Energy Transition Roadmap. Now I would like to invite Dr. Nora. The time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Rika. Okay, first of all, I would like to thank you. I would like to thank you and then express my appreciation to Energy Foundation China, EFC, for funding the project on measures and investment for clean energy and power resilience in Asia, especially to Excellency Ms. Han Wei, President Office of EFC. Secondly, I would like to express my gratitude to the Asian Center for Energy Ace, who collaborated with us on this project. And I would like to extend a special thanks to the Excellency Executive Director, Dr. Nuki Agyaptama, and the ACE team for their valuable contributions. And to all distinguished speakers, respected members who are representative for MS countries and all participants. Okay,
Dr. Nora, I think your camera is not on yet.
Okay, hold on. Sorry.
All right, we can see it.
Okay. Before I present and share the main finding of the study, let me briefly explain the study's objective. Okay, the main primary goal of this study is to assess the short-term measures and mobilization of long-term investment in promoting clean energy and enhancing power sector resilience in Asia. This is aimed at strengthening the energy security of the Asian region. Okay, this study will also enable the exploration of mutually beneficial cooperation opportunities with international stakeholders. To create a roadmap for capacity building at the national and regional level, it is important for AMS to first assess the current state of each member countries in terms of their progress towards clean energy goals, as well as their ongoing investment and initiative. So this will help identify their specific needs and areas for improvement. So the study aims to produce a strategic report that includes best practices, lessons learned, and policy recommendations to advance the clean agenda for Asian. So as stated here, okay, so for this presentation, we will divide by 5 main scope: the current state, the challenges, the practices, capacity building, and the last one is policy recommendations. Next. Okay, so as we know that mentioned by Ms. Rika, through the Asian Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, outline an ambitious target around 23% share of renewable energy in total primary energy supply and 35% share of RE in the region installed power capacity. So we can see that most of the Asian member states, for 10 member states, having put a target between this range, between 20 to up to 39% for the RE target. Yeah? As the deadline is fast approaching, MAS will need to introduce bold measures to achieve the regional climate and energy target. So MAS not only set ambitious target and clean power targets, but more importantly, we have to commit, okay, towards our target. Therefore, sustainable finance is critical to funding these long-term targets for the next few decades. Yeah? The deployment of large-scale RE system towards achieving the ambitious target may be hampered by the lack of financing. That's we found in the study is the most challenging part is to get adequate of the financing, especially for the international funding. Yeah? Therefore, one of the critical requirements for deploying more large-scale RE system is increasing the investment. Next. Okay, so before we summarize the detailed finding in terms of target and achievements, so our study found that the main gaps between the developing and underdeveloped MAS are widening. However, MAS are generally improving in the efforts to narrow this gap through the developed ones and making bigger progress. Next. Okay, so this is the clean energy target for all 10 MAS, okay, Asian member states. Okay, from this target, we can see that the highest portion for RE generation mix is put by the Myanmar, 39%, okay, for the RE in electricity generation mix by 2030, following by Philippines, putting target around 35% to be achieved by 2030. And the third one, Vietnam, by 22.3, flowing by Malaysia, 31%. And then Thailand, 30%, Brunei Darussalam, 30%, and Cambodia, 25%, Indonesia, 23%. And Singapore has put a target up to 1.5 gigawatt power RE by 2025 and 2 gigawatt power by 2030. Okay, if we look at in terms of the power mix portion, we can say that Vietnam has the highest portion in terms of hydro power, okay, following by the Laos, PDR, Cambodia in terms of the RE fuel mix. Yeah. Okay, next. Okay, so this is the achievement in terms of RE and clean energy for 10 Asian member states. Okay, so we can see that Laos PDR, okay, and then Myanmar, Cambodia, and Vietnam has a last portion in terms of hydro in their energy mix. Yeah? For example, Laos PDR, the hydro contribute around 70% to the total RE generation, following by Myanmar, around hydro is 50%, and also Cambodia around 45%, and Vietnam. So we can say that for Asian member state, most of the RE contribution is come from hydro. quite interesting when we look at on the Thailand. Okay, they have a quite interesting of energy mix where solar, hydro, bioenergy, biomass have quite we can say that average similar targets for Thailand and achievement. Yeah, in terms of Malaysia, even the RE generation is around 60%. Actually, 30% is come from hydro. Only 3% come from RE, which is from solar and biomass. And for example, for Myanmar, the RE, even they have hydro mix around 50%, but the RE contribution is only around 2%. And Vietnam, we can see that Vietnam is very aggressively towards solar, and then we found that the RE and solar contribution growingly very high speed for Vietnam, which they have almost reached 5% from the solar. Okay, next. Okay, so during our study, we have identified several challenges for the 10 Asian member states. Okay, so we found that AMS should focus and prioritize these areas. Clean energy initiative differ significantly from conventional energy initiative. Respective risks vary not only by project type, but also by country, as each AMS have differing focus and priorities, because we know that each of the AMS country have different in terms of resources, capability, technology, and also in terms of fiscal support measures. And then optimal combination of financing tools, risk mitigation strategies, funding sources, and business models must be selected for adequate financing of each clean energy project is therefore required. And secondly, in terms of institutional and regulatory framework. So the most important aspect that we have to look at on this one is the poorly administered legislation could make it difficult to attract investor even at lower price. Actually, poorly administrated legislation for energy policy refers to law, regulation, or policies related to renewable energy that manage in inefficient, ineffective, or inadequate manner. So there is some consideration that we must focus in terms of the administrative legislation. For example, focusing on the we found that there is insufficient stakeholder engagement, inefficient allocation of resources, and then lack of enforcement and monitoring could be main contributing factors to the poorly administrated legislation. And then this factor when we focus on the international and regulatory framework, surely we can improve in terms of the attainment for the AMS, where also ASEAN could learn from EU's example of balancing national and local objectives, as well as in terms of the implementation of their regulatory framework and legislation. Next. Okay, and the third factors, the challenge factors we found from our study is the regional cooperation and coordination. Though ASEAN has developed many enabling conditions through policies, coordination, accreditation, procurement, incentive, finance, and so on, but they need to be further enhanced or revised due to the current situation and considering the achievement thus far. Okay, next. Okay, so now we have chosen Laos, Philippines as for the best practice in terms of a few aspects. For example, for the Laos, okay, since Laos PDR pioneered developing and export hydropower industry in Asia, so much can be learned from examining its hydropower sector development. Okay, and then also in terms of continuous improvement, okay, although the electricity supply in Lao PDR is made up of mostly hydropower and clean, it has also introduced a number of energy efficiency and legislation to improve the situation for those. Okay, the second country that we can learn from their practices is Philippines. The Philippines recently launched Philippines Energy Roadmap 2020 to 2040 with the theme towards a sustainable and clean energy future to achieve the set target. Various plans and programs are outlined under this roadmap. And then the international partnership document of financing package involving international partners, the Philippines Sustainable Financing Roadmap and guiding principle in partnership with the British government. Next. Okay, and then the third country is Vietnam. Vietnam has issued a number of policies and planning to attract investors and facilitate their investment in the sector that is designed to become a major component in the country's power mix by 2030 and beyond. Among others, foreign investors, okay, very interesting, when they can own up to 100% of the equity in 3 types of renewable projects, which are floating solar PV, ground-mounted solar PV, and rooftop solar PV. In terms of international partnership, most recently, the Just Energy Transition Partnership between Vietnam and group of 7 nations, okay, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, UK, United States, and as well as European Union under the group of 7 nations. Under the partnership between Vietnam and industrialized countries announced last December, is expected to raise around USD 55.5 billion. Okay. Okay, next. Okay, so actually from our study, we have classified all the 10 AMS countries by 4 key phases in enhancing regional capability on clean energy investment for Asia. So we have classified into first one, classification of AMS based on current standing. This is important phase to ensure practical and workable roadmap. Okay, at this stage, we notice that vast differences in terms of the clean energy investment progress across Asia and customized capacity building programs based on member state or at least group or similar member state are foreseen. Yeah, so it is the first classification towards Asian capacity building roadmap. The second classification is optimizing investment framework. This optimization is be done based on the classification above, which will take into consideration the capability and resources of each member state and their respective clean energy investment targets. Yeah? So actually the idea is that the Asian target should be achieved overall by optimizing each member state advantage and disadvantages. And the third one is development of action plans, enhancing the expertise of policymakers in developing, enabling regulatory environments, and equipping them in planning for appropriate action plans. For example, through seminars, training, policymakers will get a better understanding on how to encourage private funding through mutual benefit. And the last classification for the roadmap building is deployment of framework and mechanism. The phase is looking towards the implementation of the action plans and monitoring. So the roadmap seeks to develop a platform to deepen the engagement between the investor, both public and private, including the financial institution. So it's also aimed to equip policymakers with knowledge of new and emerging business model to minimize the investment risk. Okay, based on these 4 classifications, we have developed the roadmap for the regional capabilities on clean energy investment. So next. So it's the capacity building roadmap based on the four classification. So we have classified the Asian 10 Asian member state based on the four classification, where in the blue category is Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand, where for the green classification is for Malaysia and Vietnam, and the orange is for Brunei Darussalam, Cambodia, Low PDR, and Myanmar. This classification is based on the achievement in terms of the clean and RE. Yeah? So for example, for Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand, we have identified some strategies here towards 2025 targets to achieve the 25% share of RE in total primary energy. For instance, for the group blue, by 2023, so we identify the mechanism to getting buy-in from financial providers and sharing established types of investment and financial instrument, and also identify the financing EV or electric vehicle and biofuel development. So by 2024, all the countries under the blue category need to financing mature and emerging technologies in power sector, and moving toward mechanism and business model for nuclear power, and also need to establish the carbon pricing trading. Okay, and then by 2025, all the countries need to achieve the financing new clean energy sources. For Malaysia and Vietnam, under the green category, so we found that there are lots of strategy need to be implementing by this country, especially in terms of attracting international investment funding, and then also to identify what is the investment available and how to optimize them, and also to in terms of financing mature and emerging technologies in power sector, and to identify the mechanism and business model for nuclear power, especially for Malaysia. In our fuel security mix study, we also look at on the potential of nuclear power in power generation mix by 2040 and 2050. And also, we also look at aggressively in terms of electricity vehicle and biofuel development, but need to get a good feedback from public and private sector. And then by 2025, the Malaysia and Vietnam also need to establish a clear direction for carbon pricing and trading. And the last one, for this group of countries, Brunei Darussalam, Cambodia, Laos, PDR, and Myanmar, they also need to aggressively to look at on how to attract the international investment funding as their strategy for the capacity building roadmap. And then for focusing on financing microgrid for remote and rural electrification, and also strategy to improve the financing mature and emerging technologies in power sector. Next. Okay, this is the strategy what I just informed us now. There is some of the strategy that can be implemented in achieving the capacity building roadmap. Some of the strategy, for example, mechanism to getting buy-in from financial providers. So among the strategy can be implemented by the AMS country is to invite experts, speakers, or instructors from more advanced countries to share expertise and experience. Secondly, in terms of financing electricity vehicle and biofuel developments, among the action that AMS country can take is to review current EV related policies, regulation, ambitions, and target of each AMS to be more supportive and investment funding. And that in order to attract international investment funding, among the strategies and action that could be implemented is to invite expert speaker, instructor from more advanced countries to share expertise and experience through conduct training, workshop about the types of investment available and how to optimize them, such as green bond, equity-based financial instruments, stock, and other financial mechanism. And under the financing, mature and emerging technologies in power sector, so the AMS also can do a promotion, encouraging, improving awareness for private funding of the new technology. In the case of Malaysia, for example, TMB pledged 20 billion per year investment until 2050 to fast track the net zero emission goal. Next. Okay, for the strategic mechanism and business model for nuclear power, also AMS country can do a promotion, encouraging, improving awareness for private funding of new technology as similar to the previous one. Yeah, and also in terms of carbon pricing trading. So it's advised that AMS to coordinate discussion on wider scope of carbon pricing implementation, leading towards regional carbon market for ASEAN. And regarding the financing microgrid for remote rural electrification, it is proposed that the mechanism to provide incentive and revenue stream from a microgrid tariff. And the last one, the financing clean cooking. So it's advisable for the AMS country to explore green cooking funding opportunities from the World Bank, and also searching for co-financing with multilateral development banks, example from Asian Development Bank, ADB. Next. Okay, so now we focus based on our study. There are some policy recommendation, and then the detail of the policy recommendation we can get from our full report for strategic report. Okay, the first one is enhancing capability and capacity to attract clean investment. Okay, under this one, it will advisable to strengthen the regional communication and cooperation among the AMS. Is the most important step to attract clean energy investment into this region. The roadmap presented earlier can serve as the starting point in designing the forms of cooperation and collaboration between the countries. Regional body, for example, Asian Energy Transition Academy or Asian Clean Energy Capacity Building Network can be established to develop a syllabus more or create a training curriculum and materials to make capacity building programs on clean energy investment and funding more structured. At the very minimum, the more advanced AMS can disseminate and share the lessons learned with the AMS to expedite the latest progress. Related documentations include coordination for enabling regulatory environment in relation to capacity building in clean energy investment and funding, the establishment of effective efficiency policies and regulatory framework in clean energy transition and clean energy investment. Next. Secondly is integrated approach to green fiscal consolidation. Efforts undertaken to reduce GHG emission can be achieved by a well-designed integrated approach to green fiscal consolidation that includes well-designed tax policy, example carbon tax, and non-tax instruments such as emission trading system, fee-based or regulation or revenue increment. Secondly, implementing green or any fiscal consolidation at the regional level can be challenging for Asian that, for example, does not share common currency. Therefore, a more appropriate implementation would be at the national level with general guidance or framework made at the regional level. And the third one, the proposed strategic initiative include establishing a proper entity to establish close collaboration between MAS, such as ASEAN Green Fiscal Network, where activities like a dialogue between MAS to exchange and share ideas on instruments, tools, and models for green fiscal budgetary monetary policy can be conducted. Next. Okay, as a conclusion, okay, this study determines the bold measures the ASEAN and AMS can take to provide enabling conditions for sustainable international and private clean energy investment and green fiscal consolidation. The capacity building area are developed from series of engagement with AMS representatives, and by taking into consideration the challenge and lesson learned from the AMS in transitioning towards clean energy. The roadmap has been distributed to the AMS representative from government agencies, ministries, research institutions, and companies for feedback. Next. Okay, under this study, we also have been requested to perform a few case study to be published in a high index journal soon. Okay, so this one is the second article that research we have conducted is on the what drive renewable energy consumption in the Asian countries, a comprehensive analysis of the key determinants. So we will share some of the main findings from one study conducted using the time series econometric procedures. Yeah. Okay, the study examines the macroeconomic determinants of renewable energy consumption in 6 Asian countries, which is Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, PDR, Malaysia, Myanmar, Brunei, and Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. However, we are not able to do for other 4 countries from Brunei, Laos, PDR, Cambodia, Laos, PDR due to the unavailable data for those countries. And because to get a very robust and reliable findings, we need to perform analysis time series from 1990 to 2090, at least 30 years for the time series analysis to get a robust finding. So in order to come up with the what drivers or determinant for the RE consumption in Asia, we use the PMG, which is the pool mean group auto-regressive lag model for the time series analysis. So we just share among the important findings from the study. Okay, in our study, we found that the result indicate a positive co-integration or positive long-run relationship between RE consumption and GDP across the Asian countries. Okay, what does that mean? That means that suggesting a long-term relationship where for all these 6 AMS, the GDP growth promotes the adoption of renewable energy in these all 6 AMS. Yeah, and then however, our study found that FDI, foreign direct investment, CO2 emission, and population show a negative relationship with the consumption of RE. Okay, the negative correlation between FDI with RE implies that RE technologies may be more expensive than fossil fuel technologies in the short run. So potentially discouraging FDI in these countries that have limited renewable energy sources. And then secondly, a negative coefficient estimate between CO2 emission to RE would imply that the effectiveness of Asian energy policies, which in other words, it implies the ineffectiveness of the energy policies in Asia. The findings suggest that the pollution level among these 6 Asian countries does not significantly motivate industry to invest in renewable energy. This finding is very important since they're giving the effectiveness of the energy policy for these 6 countries. And finally, our study found that there is a negative relationship between population growth and renewable energy consumption. So this means that the population growth has dampened effect on RE consumption, or in other words, the population growth has been satisfied the demand by the fossil fuel consumption. And Asian countries face challenge in renewable energy investment due to their excessive dependence on fossil fuel. From the achievement of RE that we just presented just now, strongly showing that the RE mix in power generation is still low for all ASEAN member state countries that support the finding of the study. And then analyzing macroeconomic variables related to renewable energy adoption in ASEAN can have significant policy implication and provide insights for policymakers in reviewing renewable energy policies and targets. Okay, okay, that's all from my presentation. And then for the Q&A, so I will is it Ms. Rika? I need to answer the question now or?
Later on, Dr. Nora. So I will thank you very much for your comprehensive explanations on the report, the roadmap, as well as the draft journal paper just now. Now, first, I would like to invite first some experts to provide comments regarding the study and other related insights. The first one, we are honored to welcome Ms. Cecilia Tam. Cecilia Tam is a senior investment analyst at the International Energy Agency, or IEA. Cecilia was also responsible for the development of the IEA Energy Technology Roadmaps program, and she is an expert in clean energy finance, energy efficiency, energy technology deployment, and innovation. Ms. Cecilia Tam, the time is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for the invitation to share with you some comments on the report. What I'd like to do is use some of the findings from two new IEA publications to help provide some of these comments. First of all, from the new World Energy Investment report, as well as joint analysis that we released just last week, building on the IEA's work on finance and investment, to look at how we can scale up private finance for clean energy in emerging and developing economies, that was published last week ahead of the summit on a new global financing pact that took place last week in Paris. First of all, let's just take a look at where we are today globally. So as you can see, recent investments in fossil
excuse
fuels.
me, Ms. Cecile, the slide is not yet full mode. Could you please share in the full slide? Thank you.
Okay.
Full screen.
Is it now showing in full screen?
Not yet. Now, yes. No. Try again, please.
Now do you see it or?
No, not yet.
Okay, 1 minute, please. Is this better?
Yes, yes. Now
All
it's
right,
full screen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So where do we see, what are the most recent developments in clean energy investments globally? So as I mentioned, we, as a result of the global pandemic, we've seen a relatively flat development in fossil fuels immediately after we saw quite a big reduction. While we saw quite a dynamic growth in clean energy investments globally, with about $1.7 for going to clean energy for every dollar spent in fossil fuels, which is very encouraging at the global level. Now, where we've seen quite good growth and good shift in clean energy spending, if we take a more detailed look at what is happening in different markets, what we see is that too much of this growth is coming from advanced economies. And then if we strip out China, what you can see is that in other emerging and developing economies, investments in clean energy have been relatively flat, with too few countries showing positive shifts in clean energy spending, really dominated by large emerging and middle income economies such as India, Brazil, Thailand, and Vietnam. So In the new report that we just released last week with the IFC, the IEA has provided detailed subsector and regional analysis on where investments will need to go in the net zero scenario by 2050. And here what you can see is that if we exclude China from the analysis by the early 2030s, we'll need to see a 7-fold increase in spending in clean energy investments, really driven by investments in clean power, but also big increases in energy efficiency and end use decarbonization, as well as investments in low emissions fuels. And as you can see here, across the emerging and developing economies, we'll need to see quite significant investment across the emerging economies, across all of these areas. In terms of investments in achieving universal access in electricity and clean cooking fuels by 2030, we see just less than 2% of spending needed for those areas. So what are the sources of finance? In 2022, you'll see that just under half of the investments came from the private sector, with public sources of finance, including financing from development finance institutions, making up more than half of investments going into clean energy investments. Now, if we look to 2030, we'll see that investments from the public sources of finance will need to double to 2030. We'll see very sharp increase required from development finance institutions that will be financing projects that would not otherwise receive financing, mainly driven by the public sector and state-owned enterprises. But also importantly, those funds from DFIs will need to help mobilize a much larger share and growth in private investments. And here you'll see that by 2030, about 60% of the finance for investments in all emerging and developing economies will need to come from the private sector. And if we strip out China, a much larger share will need to come from private sector investments. Now, I would say that coming out of the report that we released last week with the IFC, we see really 4 major actions that will be needed to scale up investments. A lot of these were also mentioned in the report that was presented by Dr. Nora. The first of that is improving the policy environment and strengthening institutions to improve and strengthen the risk return profile of investments across the area of clean energy technologies necessary, from renewables to strengthening grid and energy storage, as well as supporting efficiency investments, as well as decarbonizing fuels. Then we'll also need to see significantly more concessional finance to help mitigate country and project risks, to improve credit quality, as well as improving financing terms. And this is an area which was not so much highlighted in the report itself, and an area we would recommend that you take a closer look at across ASEAN. And in the report, we've highlighted that between 80 and 100 billion in concessional finance will be needed to help mobilize private capital. If we look only at ASEAN, the amount is between 7 and 9 billion in concessional financing will be needed to help de-risk projects that can bring in private capital. In ASEAN, according to the IEA's net zero emission scenario, we see about 67% of the capital needed to finance the transition coming from the private sector. And this will require investments of about 190 to just under 250 billion in investments each year to meet a net zero trajectory. And I think the message that I want to leave you with here is that it's not just about increasing the amount of concessional finance that's available from the international community, but using that money in a more catalytic way. The OECD 100 billion report at the global level has identified that about 40 billion in climate finance was provided and mobilized in 2020. Of that, 31 came from public climate finance sources for energy, transport, and industry. But unfortunately, for every dollar spent, only 30 cents went towards mobilizing private finance. So only 9 billion of the 31 billion was able to mobilize private capital. We'll need to more effectively leverage and use that limited international concessional funds to de-risk projects that can really bring in much more, much higher leverage ratios of private finance. According to the IEA's net zero scenario, for every dollar of concessional international public money, we'll need to see leverage ratios of about 6 to 7 in commercial third-party capital. A third area of actions will be needed for new financing instruments and platforms. The study that was released already highlighted the role of green and sustainable linked loans and bonds. We saw that in 2022, just under $1 trillion was issued globally, but only about 136 trillion was for emerging and developing economies. And of that, half of that accounted for investments in China. And it's great that the European Climate Foundation was helping to share experiences with China with ASEAN, because there is already a lot of good experiences, and we see a lot happening in China, both in terms of investments, but also in sustainable finance areas. We see a lot of opportunities for attracting international capital, but we'll need to see more aggregation platforms that can help increase the size of investment opportunities that would be needed to bring in international capital, as well as the development of carbon markets that can bring in significant sources of revenues through providing more attractive opportunities to bring capital into the emerging economies, including for ASEAN. And then finally, we see significant need to deepen local capital markets and financing systems to be able to scale domestic private investments. And already in many economies, we see, such as in Thailand, the Philippines, and to a certain degree in Vietnam, a lot of the more recent investments in clean energy have been really dominated by domestic markets. And more action will be needed to mobilize more domestic sources of finance. And with that, I'd like to end my comments, and thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to the questions and discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cecilia, for your valuable insights. It's interesting to find that the policy recommendations between ACE's report and the recent report of IEA are somehow interconnected and related. Thank you. Now let me move to our second commentator, Ms. Monica Merdekawati. She is a research analyst of ACE, Sustainable and Renewable Energy Department, with over 7 years of experience in RE. She has published various studies covering RE policies, financing issues, coal phase-out, innovative solar PV application, biogas to electricity, biofuel R&D roadmap, and energy climate nexus. Ms. Monica, the time is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Rika, for the kind introduction and the opportunity. So allow me to start by sharing my screen first. May I check if you have seen it in the full screen mode?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So hello, my name is Monica Merdekawati. I am a researcher of Sustainable and Renewable Energy Department of ACE. for the next 10 minutes. Hopefully, I will share some of my thoughts on the report. So first, I want to appreciate the team from ACE, Ms. Rika and the team, and also Dr. Nora and the team from the Unit 10 who developed this report, and also EFC for the support. This report enriches the existing discussion on the core topic of the energy transition. The debate always returns to the question of how much financial support is needed to make the decarbonization idea into reality, who will provide the financing, how to minimize the risk of clean energy projects. Hence, the investors are confident enough to spend their money, and how to mobilize this money just in time when we need it. So I want to first highlight several insights from the report. The report has accurately addressed the key elements that challenges the clean energy investment. First is varying focus and also priorities amongst the member states, whereas the clean energy projects involves relatively a new technology, particularly if compared with the conventional fossil fuel. Therefore, in nature, these clean energy projects are more riskier and challenging to develop. And ASEAN member states have different indigenous resources and ambitions. These local circumstances underline that there is no one fits all solution. For example, wind technology might not work in several member states, and also like from financial perspective, pure private financing might not work also in several member countries. The report also accurately points out the need to improve the capacity in administering the institutional and regulatory framework, and the importance of the regional cooperation in achieving regional common goal. The report proposed interesting view on the capacity building roadmap for each country based on their current status and priority. What I understand from the report clustered it into the early stage category under the yellow color that focuses on the rural electrification, clean cooking, and also microgrid decarbonization. And then the mid category with a broader energy spectrum focus, such as the transport, nuclear, and carbon pricing, and also advanced category with the blue color here, with the development of new clean energy sources and knowledge sharing. Now, what I want to also highlight here and direct your attention is to, when we go back into this ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, or APAEC, the blueprint that guides all this energy discussion in regional level. In ASEAN, we have these two clean energy targets that already mentioned many times before, that we have this 23% RE share of TPS, and also 35% of installed power capacity by 2025, and the 32% energy intensity reduction by 2025. Specific on the RE, I want to show where we are now, and what are the sector that should be the focus of this clean energy investment. So by 2021, ASEAN has reached this 14.4% RE share of TPS and by 2020, for your information, ASEAN has reached 33.5% of total installed capacity, RE share of total installed capacity, which is only leaving only 1.5% gap towards achieving the regional target. And amongst this 2021 achievement in the TPS, biomass and biofuels took over like more than 50%, and the rest are from geothermal and hydropower, which primarily represent the electricity supply. So what I would like to highlight here, that perhaps transport and industry hold more significant role in driving up this RE share in the regional target, whereas our focus so far perhaps only focusing too much on the power, perhaps. So in addition to the report, I would like to also share several other reports that ACE has published covering different decarbonization pathways on different sectors. And I want to share one specific report that we launched a month ago in early May. This is the ASEAN RE regional approach, just to give you the context of how this clean energy investment discussion falls into the regional energy cooperation. First is, besides it's actually the recommendation aligned with the recommendation of this report, I would like to highlight a few things like, besides learning from the international best practices, actually ASEAN has also developed a significant experience and knowledge in RE development to be shared with each other. So that's why it is, I strongly support the suggestion that ASEAN need like specific forum for the countries in sharing those best practices and lessons learned. And in addition, the intensified investment on decarbonizing the transport, industrial, and power sector, investing on the cross-border infrastructure such as ASEAN Power Grid and regional and economic integration framework, for example, like regional carbon pricing or RE's renewable energy certificate market is also important, because it is like one of the key elements to strengthen this regional approach. And of course, phasing out from the fossil fuel and focusing, increasing the capacity for the member states in order to be able to tap into this climate finance opportunity. And by aiming also the capacity building to the top policymakers, and also advocating this negawatt approach, consuming better. And for all these efforts is to improve the ASEAN clean energy ambitions to its full potential. And this graph is just to conclude my rambling thoughts. So I want to direct again your attention that why we are having this kind of discussion. First, this graph is showing like typical project risk, and actually what we should focus on the early stage, in particular the development stage, that this is the most volatile period, and this is where all the innovation need to be directed. First of all, I think the first is the member states should like define clear process to promote fair competition by merit. So like the investor have the confidence enough to invest in the clean energy sector, and also diversify and decentralize. So like we have this many RE projects with smaller sizes, hence lower risk, but with multiplied or replicated with a bigger scale. And also, again, I would like to highlight that it is important for the ASEAN as the community to have stronger regional interconnectivity and also knowledge sharing platform. So I think that concludes my presentation. Thank you for the kind opportunity, and I welcome any question. Thank you, Ms. Rika, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Monica, for your valuable insights and sharing several related reports on this topic. Now I would like to have a really short, brief Q&A session with all the panelists, Dr. Nora, Ms. Cecilia Tam, and Ms. Monica Merdekawati. Because due to the limited time, maybe only short Q&A session. Can I invite Dr. Nora again and Ms. Cecilia Tam to open your camera and have a discussion with us? Yeah, so perhaps my first question to Dr. Nora, what do you think the way forward, and what can we improve from this study? Maybe from the challenges you found, or your other recommendations. Thank you. I think you're still in mute.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rika. Regarding the way forward, I think for the next study, maybe there is several areas that can be improved or continued to further advance clean energy investment study for Asian region. Yeah. So for example, I would like to suggest that for the next study, maybe we can conduct a quite similar study, but more on country-specific studies. While the current study we do collectively, so maybe by doing the conducting country-specific studies can provide more nuanced insights into the unique challenge and opportunities for each countries face regarding clean energy investment. And also, I think maybe we also can look at on the policy analysis, such as to assess the effectiveness of existing policies by evaluating the effectiveness of the existing clean energy and financial support measure for each member states. This assessment can identify gaps, highlight successful initiative, and guide policymakers for each member state of countries. So I would like to suggest that we focusing for each country need to do quite similar study, but more on country-specific studies.
Noted. So more on the country level.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about Ms. Monica? How do you think this report that is launched today can help ASEAN the way forward, be the current regional targets, or perhaps setting the new targets in the next APEC cycle?
Yeah, what I see, as I mentioned before, this report contributed a lot in the giving the guidance on what capacity building needs that the member state should pursue to mobilize more more clean energy investment, different category for different countries. So this program actually really, capacity building program really important for our policymakers, so they have they have the most up-to-date information and understand what are the challenges and what are the policy measures to really support again the enabling environment that support fair competition between the private investors. So yeah, I think that's the most valuable things from this report. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Monica. And perhaps I would also like to ask the opinion from Ms. Cecile. How is this regional level report can maybe support the global report like the IEA publish and works?
Thanks very much. I mean, I would say that it would be helpful as you develop the report findings to provide more insights at the ASEAN, but also, as Dr. Nora mentioned, at the country level, to understand really what the risks are and how these risks are impacting the cost of finance. So if it's possible to collect additional data on how different investors in the finance sector at the different ASEAN economies are perceiving risks at the policy level, to really break it down to then understand at the international level how we can support de-risking elements to bring in more domestic as well as international capital. If it's an issue of addressing currency risks in the case of trying to bring in international capital, or is it around perceived risk around PPA conditions and other policy linked levers? Is it about pricing risk for things like grid integration, to better understand really how private investors, what are the real perceived and real risks, and how we as an international community can provide climate finance, concessional finance to help overcome some of those risks, to then be able to mobilize more private capital, either from international institutional investors, pension funds, insurance companies, as well as how you can then bring in some of these international investors to help de-risk and provide experience, share sort of their experience funding projects internationally, to share lessons with domestic investors as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So yeah, due to the limited times, it's already almost already past 3:30 p.m. in Jakarta time. So thank you very much, all panelists, for your valuable time and sharing knowledge with us. For all participants, we have shared the links to download our reports and also the link for the presentation slides of all the panelists. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and I pass back to our MC, Mr. Juan.
Right. Thank you so much, Ms. Rika, and to all of distinguished speakers for the insightful sessions. Last but not least, I would like to welcome Dr. Zulfikar Yunaidi, Manager of Energy Modeling and Policy Planning in ACE, to deliver the closing session with the way forward and closing remarks for the workshops. Mr. Zulfikar, the floor is now yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. MC. First of all, I would like to say thank you very much for all the speakers that have shared your time with us. Ms. Hanwei from the EFC, Dr. Nuki, who provided the opening remarks, distinguished speakers, Professor Nora, thank you very much for joining us, and Hajj Mubarak for Professor Haslin. Rika, our colleagues, Monica, Ms. Cecilia Tam from the OECD, and distinguished participants. Again, thank you very much for spending your valuable time in sharing your perspectives and insights in this report launching webinar, of which we present the findings and results of the studies regarding especially the integrated approach on green fiscal consolidations towards energy transition in Southeast Asia, including the capacity building roadmap on energy investment ASEAN. I think we had productive discussions. Hopefully it can provide insightful guidelines for our participants from ASEAN regulators and also policymakers, so we can design and make better decisions regarding investment policy to attract funding for energy infrastructure. We also hope that the exchange of the views during this webinar can assess the short-term measures and mobilizing long-term investment in clean energy and power sector resiliency in ASEAN. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to note that this workshop is benefited from the support from the Energy Foundation China, or EFC, which together with us co-organized the event and also the study. We had quite strong collaborations in two studies and policy recommendations previously on the green recovery plans and integrations of variable renewable energy and electric vehicles. And in this year, it's part of our collaboration is this study on the topic of investment for clean energy and power sector. The study is supported strongly by our colleagues from the Unit 10, Prof. Haslin, Prof. Nora, and also all colleagues. And also thank you for all the supporting team from ACE that make the report, the launching, and also the webinar today a successful events. Last but not least, please allow me to share with you a bit of events that we are going to have from the ASEAN Center for Energy. First and foremost, we're going to have this fourth ASEAN Energy Youth Awards, or the AEA. This is supported by Korean Ministry of Trade and also Korean Energy Agency. The theme for this year ASEAN Energy Youth Awards is Advancing Energy Transition and Energy Security for Sustainable Development. It is open for all ASEAN and also Korean citizenship students. Please submit your creations on or before 11 July 2023. This includes essay, infographics, and also video. Next slide, please. The ASEAN Energy Youth Award will be awarded in the ASEAN Energy Business Forum, or the AEBF, 24 until 26 August 2023. This is going to be conducted in conjunction with the official or ministerial meeting, or the AMEM. And we're going to have like a lot of events in here, including the Green Transport Rally, the Minister CEOs Dialogue, and even like ASEAN Energy Leaders Golf Tournaments. For more information, you can visit our website and also scan the QR code on the screen. Next slide, please. Integral part of the AEBF is the ASEAN International Conference on Energy and Environment, or the ICE. We are entering the third year, and the first ICE and also AEBF that is going to be conducted full offline. So we're also going to invite you to join us, especially from the university and also research institutes. The theme for this year is accelerating a just, secure, and resilient energy transition in ASEAN through innovation and interconnectivity. This will be conducted also in Bali in the same locations in the Bali Nusa Dua Convention Center together with the AEBF and also the AMEM. As before, for more information, please feel free to scan the QR code on the screens. The current status is we are opening for abstract until end of this month. But a hint, we are planning to extend the abstract submission for another 2 weeks. So if you think you have good research that you want to share with all participants, not only from the academic and research institutes, but also for the business and also government institution, please feel free to submit your abstract and join us in the third IHA 24-25 August in Bali. I think that will be all from my side. Hope to see you again in our upcoming events. Thank you very much and have a nice day. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for the speech, Dr. Zulfikar. Dear all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are now at the end of the seminars. I would like to thank you for your proactive participation in the event and having a fruitful discussion with our speakers. We do hope that the information shared in today's seminar would be beneficial for your future work. And we would like to send our sincere appreciation to all the speakers, colleagues from ACE and EFC for making this project a reality. Last but not least, we would like to once again share our invitation to access and download our roadmap and report by scanning the QR code provided. So you can access and download both of the documents. And that's all from me. We wish you all stay safe and healthy. See you soon at the following events and activities. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.